Welcome to Mentorship Mondays with Michelle and Maren, your magical mamas with one foot in the grocery store aisle and another foot in the metaphysical world. How you doing, Maren?
Good, Michelle. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We got
Good.
through another week of warm weather, and some celebration. We had Canada Day and
And
the
we had the
July
fourth.
4th. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we're well into the summer now.
Okay, good. All right. Well, and I'm trying out a new mic situation. So hopefully I listened to last week's episode and I was so quiet. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, everyone. So hopefully this is better. And if not, I'll try something again next week. So
Yep. Sounds good.
um,
Sounds good on this end so far.
okay, good. Did I sound quiet to you when we were recording last
I
week?
didn't think so. I didn't think so.
That's so
No.
weird. Okay. I don't know what it was.
It's trial and error. Isn't that what life is? It's trial and error in real time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. One day we'll have all the answers. One
Yeah.
day.
But then what fun would that be? So, yeah.
That's true. That's true. Well, so I have some sad news to share that I thought we could talk about, just kind of help our understanding, and kind of goes along with the headlines of the week here. So we had a personal friend that died tragically this weekend, and
Hmm.
um, when I reached out, um, they hadn't crossed yet, and it was this real intense kind of period of worry um, and I thought we could kind of talk about like how that happens, with
Hmm. Hmm.
crossing and the different phases and what can happen to someone when they cross
Hmm.
um, and as that relates to these poor children that and adults as well that died in this Texas flood in this
Hmm.
horrible event, um, to maybe offer some comfort and some understanding with those events as well. Sound like a plan?
It sounds like a good plan. I'm sorry to hear about your friend, and very sorry to hear also about the I don't know a lot of information. I don't have a lot of it, but I did hear some of it that happened in Texas, and I'm so sorry to all those that are affected. And, whenever we see tragedy,
Mm,
on whatever scale that is, it touches all of us.
mm-hmm,
And, that's important to remember that the grief and the recognition of what we experience as human beings is first and foremost, the most important thing. And so, for anybody that is experiencing deep grief or is in a space of confusion or discomfort with what's going on, we send our love to you, and, hope that you can receive some support from what we talk about today, and
mm-hmm,
offer that into your home as well.
mm-hmm,
So I think the biggest thing is that when we discuss when somebody crosses, when we discuss transition, especially when we're looking at events, which unfortunately we've seen so many events, um, where there have been groups, children, women, families, um, and what is occurring right now around the world, particularly in Texas, when there's tragedy, when there's a life and death experience that happens so quickly without understanding or knowing, without knowing that was the last time I was going to speak to that person. They were
mm-hmm,
perfectly fine in the moments before, and then something tragic
mm-hmm,
takes place. How does
mm-hmm,
that receive on the other side? The
mm-hmm,
one that has crossed, the ones that have crossed, Well, the first thing to understand is, of course, you know, we are multidimensional and there are many layers to our experience. When we're experiencing life here physically, many of us, and not all listening to this, of course, to us, but many experience the world physically in a linear form, it's morning, noon, and night. They were here, now they're gone. And
Yeah.
so that is a real experience and perspective, even though we know there are many other layers to reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to remember that when somebody crosses, there are a couple things that come into effect. One is when someone crosses, does their belief system, does their understanding of who they are before they crossed and what they believed about themselves and about everyone else, does that play any part into their transition? Yes, it does. Not the whole part, but there is, we'll say, call it a flavor. So
Hmm.
it's like a spice. So when we have an
Hmm.
ingredient, when we have a cake, we are not just putting one ingredient in, we have many different things that we put in. So the belief
Okay.
system and the life experience is like a spice in your cake. So it's going to have a flavor to the experience,
Hmm.
but it's not the whole thing.
Hmm.
So
I think
if a
that
per
that's,
hmm,
oh, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I think that that was like the most shocking thing to me as like becoming a medium. Well, I just thought you die and you cross and you go to heaven, and then I don't know who the ghosts were, whatever. Like, but like, I think that was just like the most shocking thing. And then we've had these two personal tragic deaths, and one person, when I reached out into their energy field right after their accident, it was like I kept hearing this like slap, like they were gone. Like it was like they were right out of their body and right into heaven, and
mhm,
there wasn't an instant in between. And then this most recent one, when I reached out to their energy, they were still stuck in that like chaotic state and worried about their like self, like their
yeah,
body, their like I still felt so much of their physical
mhm,
presence, if that's, you know what I
mhm,
mean, like so much of their like physical personality. It's like they had a hard time maybe like separating, or I don't know if you want to like, and I get,
mhm,
now I get what you're saying with like the baking of the cake with the two different personalities.
mhm.
um it's almost like the second one wanted to like will himself
Yes.
back into his
That
body and into, like he wasn't ready. And but it's like not, the other one wasn't any more ready. They're both two young individuals, but
exactly.
like,
Exactly. So we have to so being out of the body doesn't make one all knowing all of a sudden. It's
okay.
from my experience in channeling and what has been shared with me is that the experience becomes uh more in 4K. Like things are sound, sight, all the way around. So there's a view, a completely different experience, an immediate lightness. All of these things are things that have been told to me over and over and over from different spirits that have crossed. What changes is the belief system has an effect to it, whereas if somebody, particularly in those that are crossing with an awareness that they will be, so they have illness, there's been some preparation, so they're expecting to meet certain individuals. They're expecting, religious figures or whomever that they are close to that they're hoping will be there. So that experience tends to follow that belief system to a degree. But even with those that, I've had those that have come through that didn't believe in anything in their life. And
Hmm.
some had a little bit of difficulty crossing and some didn't. And what I'm being told right now to share is that the space in between, the liminal space. So this is what we're calling, and we should say spaces because it's just not one. It's not a location like everything else. It's an energetic space. It's a consciousness. It's an expansion past the physical body. So there is some people will call it the tunnel, the bridge. There is a space that is experienced, that is this liminal place that is not a punishment. It is not a place of judgment. It is not a you can't cross because. It's nothing like that at all. What it is it is the continuation of our understanding of self beyond the body. And it is a place of recognition that there is change. So it is the realization of I am not in my body anymore. I am still me. And so we have to remember that when that happens tragically and quickly,
Mm-hmm.
that there are some that aren't ready for that. There are some that are like, all right, let's go. Like a magnet. They just go, like you said, the other one. And then there are some that are like, hey, I need a minute here. I need a minute. I need a minute just to kind of get my bearings. I need a minute. Like, what happened? What happened? Like, why am I hearing my loved one crying? And why am I, like, is there something I can do? Did I do
Mm-hmm.
something? It's like answering these questions. And I will tell you 100% of the time, there is no child that ever leaves the body that does not have a guardian there.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. There is always a guardian or some guardians, whether it be somebody in your family, an angelic presence, more. There is always something there. Now, I'm going to say this too, because this question just popped in my mind. This might be something that somebody might be thinking right now is what about all the times that we hear about, um, you know, people, including children, that are existing past the body that we would say we're in a haunted space or something along that
Oh,
lines.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if they are guided every time, then why does that exist? Then
Yeah.
how can that be? And there's a good answer to this, and this goes right back to us being multidimensional because it is not that full spirit. Every single individual that crosses, their pure essence, their spirit, always crosses. However, we'll say in the sake of the child, why would there be a child that would still be in, say, period clothing from the 1900s that would be
Yeah.
looping around in a property? Well, the reason why they are could be one of these things. Is there free will that that child's spirit wants to stay and not cross? It's rare. It is more rare that that would happen, but yes, of course, because free will is something that they have, that we have beyond our physical body to choose and to do and to be. Um, the other thing is, let's say there was trauma and that child either received trauma, witnessed it, and this is what we call a fractal. So, a fractal of the personality,
Yeah.
right? So, that can become an imprint on land, on property. It's like a memory. So, those could be experienced by people as a loop. So, seeing a spirit, experiencing a spirit, even hearing the voice of a spirit of a young child at a certain period of time, we may know in that location certain things happened. And so it's not that they're actually trapped or there, it's that memory, it's that fractal, that pain. That's what needs to be witnessed for.
So
Yeah.
my very first ghost experience was a kid. So right after I had my awakening, I went on a trip at this hotel. It was a wedding, and so they have like you have to stay at this hotels where all the wedding
Yeah.
guests are
Yeah.
staying. And so, of course, it's like known as a haunted hotel. And I remember reading that going like, oh, great. Like, really? And anyway, so I remember like I was laying down in bed, about ready to fall asleep, and this little ghost, well, spirit girl, she jumped onto the bed, like bounded onto the bed, and she was wearing like a swim cap, and she starts showing me pictures of her parents and like showing me all this stuff. And I was just like, kind of like, I think this was my very first hotel experience. So like, just really kind of taken back, like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on here. And then I went and I told my little mediumship circle friends, and they were like, she was a ghost. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And they were like, yeah, like she's from like the 1800s, or like, because everybody was, yeah, I'd say early 1900s, like based on like her outfit. And, um, and they were like, yeah, like I think she probably drowned in the pool because she had a little swim cap on. And so so you think that that was like residual energy left behind?
No, not her. Okay, so
Okay.
residual energy would be more when you're getting the echoes. So but there can be intelligent energy. So what you were experiencing had more intelligence to it. So that could be because a fractal doesn't mean that it doesn't have intelligence to it. A fractal is a part of the personality connected to that spirit that has had experience, has had life experience.
Okay.
And so, for one reason or another, it is in the image of that life and holding a
Okay.
pattern. So, it could be in that location because of the pool, because of trauma, and in that age loop, but it is not an actual residual loop. A residual is where it's like a photocopy. It's like a
Okay.
continuous loop, and where you're going to hear, like at 10 o'clock every night, I can hear the pitter patter of child's feet. Like, so that would be a loop. So that's not actual intelligence. That's like an overlay of energy,
Got it.
right?
Got it.
So you're
Yeah.
experiencing something that has more intelligence. And this is where it's completely understandable. I mean, for how long have we experienced the world where it's either this or this, or it's got to be this way? And this is where things can get
Yeah.
really confusing because they're all true. There's all these little pieces of truth to what's happening, but why is it happening? So when we go back to that liminal space, are there souls that choose not to cross? Yes. And does that mean that a part of them doesn't cross? Well, a part always does. There's a part that, like, I always call it the essence, the spirit essence crosses. But you know how in a lot of spiritual community, there's conversations or work that's done about bringing your parts back,
Yes.
bringing
So
your
like soul retrieval type stuff.
this is along that lines, because if you think about all of our lifetimes, it's overlapping, right? So we're running a past, a future, and a present, and it's in different directions all the time. So imagine there's lots of overlapping. There's lifetimes that we're experiencing that have trauma and that have pain, that have, all of these different things that have taken place where life has been lost early, where love was never met, where, pain was never resolved, relationships, all of these things that have had all of these little speckles. And so think about every time we would transition, there would be these little pieces that would be left in locations, that would be left like almost like little memories. And so when we have the awareness and we come into this life with the awareness, or come to the awareness, to remember that we have the ability to travel in any direction and put attention to wherever that pain was. And it may come from feeling pain in this life, where we start to seek out those pieces in other lifetimes. And so sometimes soul retrieval can happen because of, there not being really time and space that we can locate anywhere to be able to pick those pieces back, but sometimes you'll hear of someone that travels to a location and they all of a sudden feel complete. They did something at a
Mm-hmm.
location. Think about how we honor things. Like, there's so much to be said about all of these pieces, like pieces of a puzzle, all over the place. And just as a little hint, this particular lifetime, for all of us that are in this awareness, it has a lot to do with picking up all of these pieces and remembering ourselves in completion.
Oh,
Not in perfection, in completion, right? So that's a lot of what our healing process and remembrance really is. So the liminal space is a real place. It is not one place. It
would
is a transitionary place.
is that also the astral plane, or is that different?
Um, that's a good question. Well, it is the same in a way. Because yes, it's a in language, yes, we would call it a dimensional space. Um, because fourth dimension doesn't mean that it's without body. The astral realm, um, they're calling the astral realm a transitional space where spirit without a body can move and maneuver, that unseen can move and maneuver. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is the same space where a spirit is going through a transitional or I can't even say the word, to reorient themselves. So it's kind of like saying, okay, Eric's giving me this one. Think of it like this. Think of uh, the airport as being the astral plane, okay? And he's saying all these different terminals in the airport are like there's people moving all inside. It says astral airport. He's showing all these terminals, and so a plane comes in and somebody gets off the plane, and this is somebody who has just had an accident or who has passed real quickly, and they're a little confused. And so they get off the plane, and all of these people that they once knew, or pets, or people they'd heard about, they're all there to greet them, but they're like, how did I get on this plane? How did I even get here? Like, I don't even know where I am. And so they're escorted into this room. And in this room, they're able to reorient themselves. They're given comfort. They're getting the full lowdown on what's happening. Now, Eric says there's also, remember, some of these terminals are people that are like, hey, I have my boarding pass, but I'm just going to wander around here for a while and check out the shops. I'm just going to look at a few places because I'm not really sure if I want to get on my plane and go to my destination yet. So he says it's like having different rooms. So, yes, is the astral the same? It is, but he says think of the astral as more of a space to move through and not necessarily exactly what it is that's happening with each individual. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I was kind of thinking of it too as like maybe like the liminal plane is like I think like Harry Potter when he puts on like the invisible cloak and it's like almost like a little bit it's like reality but different, or something
Yes,
like that or
yes,
like
yes,
or maybe
yes.
it's like the wow, what's the other one? Stranger Things, where it's like they do something and then they're like in reality, but it's different. And then versus like the
Yes.
astral plane seems more of like the merging of the two, um, of like the 3D, 4D kind of experience. Does that make sense? Like it's more like when I think about near death experiences, it's like at first they're like, I was floating above, whoop, I
Yeah.
lost my AirPod. Hold on. Um, they would say like I was floating above my body, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it's like they kind of get to this dark space where they meet Jesus or they see a grandparent or something, which would maybe be the astral plane. Is that
Eric said it would be the other way around. Think of astral as
okay?
more of the, but he said just like we would describe heaven, he says if we're describing heaven as one place, it's not really one place. It's got multiple
Right.
layers to it. So he says, so
Right.
does the astral realm. Everything has multiple layers to it that overlay, that aren't
Okay.
just like an end and a start, but it continuously overlay. And so he says an astral is out of the body.
Got it.
Astral is it's a layer of reality that is he's I was going to say the word distorted, but he says it's distorted sometimes carries a negative response to it, where
Yeah.
he says it doesn't mean negative. It's not negative.
Right.
It's different, and it's without definition of space. But he says there's also higher, not better, higher astral realms where a lot of, if there's near death experiences, that's where these things take place. He goes the liminal and in between space. He says the thing is think of it as being in a protective space. So he says you're not lost. You're not wandering. He says for some are in healing. So it would be like, he's trying to give me some examples here. Like, he's showing me the waters, because many spirits talk about the healing waters or being in healing
Hmm.
pools. And he says, he just showed me a pool that he's in that's like a hot tub with like
It's like,
sunglasses on.
hey.
Yeah. And so he's saying that it's dependent on what it is that is being washed through. He says, notice we didn't say washed away. It's washed through. So it's putting understanding to our life experience and what we're moving to, what we're moving away from. But the liminal spaces are when there's more time needed. So he says, many experience that, some for a day, and he says it's even experienced where some religions talk about there being so many days that those that have passed stay with us. And
Yeah, I've heard that before.
and does that happen? He goes, well, often that belief has been experienced through a culture or through a family tradition that it will play out like that. It doesn't mean that that is what happens with every individual. It means that that has an importance. It has a ceremony to it, and the spirit honors it as much as the family does. It's like he says, an agreement, a co-agreement. So why they experience it that way, but he says that, you know, we do this very well. He says we like to put definitions and, explanations, labels to how
Yeah.
this is experienced. And he says we do a pretty good job. But he says the
Yeah.
most important thing is to remember, try not to get too attached to exactly what it means,
To
because he
names and
says
things.
what's happening right now, through a lot of our work with spirit, is he says we're starting to ground some of the language into deeper experience as we move through our process. But he says also we're going to realize more and more that we're walking deeply in a pathway that is looking very different than the generations or decades before us, with labels and explanations. And so we may he goes, everybody listening to this too, you may hear something and be like, well, I've experienced it this way, or this is how I've heard that it was. And he says, I want you to hear this. When you experience something, don't rush to put a label to it. And even as you're hearing us talk about these different spaces, he says, allow it to be a loose structure within you. Allow it to give you a little framework. Because he
Yeah.
says, when you start to get real solid on definitions, and this is what this means, and this is what this means,
Then we
he
get
says,
confused.
yeah, he goes, you'll get confused, you start to feel conflicted, you start to compare, and then he says, then you start to be like, oh, well, this must be wrong, or I'm wrong. And he goes, and really we're not. He says, because we're all carrying these different pieces of a reflective puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, one more thing just to tell you. He goes, you're not going to finish your puzzle when you cross over. It's just going to be another new board of the puzzle. You're just going to keep moving puzzle pieces, just different.
That's really interesting
Yeah.
because when I tried to connect to my family friend, he showed me a puzzle piece with one puzzle piece missing. So when you're saying that, I'm like, wait, that's a really weird reference that you're giving me right now.
Interesting.
That is, what does it
Yeah.
mean? Okay, so
Yeah.
it kind of makes me feel like so their soul crosses, but sometimes there can be fragments left behind or energy left behind. That kind of reminds me of like when you hear the stories of like the kids that have the nightmare about like, the there's like a couple, like one where the kid has nightmares about the World Trade Center, and then there was one where the kid had a nightmare about like getting shot in a plane, and it's like these kids are remembering these past life traumatic memories. Is it because like they're that like little soul piece got left in that space and they're remembering that space?
Yes, it can be. Um, yes, sometimes they're picking up on, say, a fragment of something that they have experienced, yes, in that location, in a dream. Um, it's not really, they're saying it's not really prophecy. Like it's not really, it has more to do with remembrance. And so when we dream, even like children dream about things that haven't happened yet, there is some fragment of their soul connected to either an event or a location, and something in their soul has triggered that to come out, even if it's an event that hasn't happened yet in our physical life. It's a timeline that's already been connected to. And
Hmm.
so that can happen with children, that are born of events that have happened in our history, and they have memories. It's not really past life memory, although that's how we positioned it to understand it, but it's soul remembrance.
Okay.
It's a really, a lot of this stuff, like, we could really talk for hours about so many of these
There's so
different,
many. Yeah.
yeah, there's
I,
so many
I
different
guess
pieces to it.
to wrap us up as concerned, citizens listening to this news, is there anything we can do to help with like the crossing of these kids or to make sure that they're, you know,
The
going
the
where they need
best
to go?
the best thing that we could do, because truly their souls know, like, they're never lost. They will never be lost. Their souls do know. But what is always helpful is saying a blessing, speaking to their souls, sending love to them, reminding them that they're thought of, reminding them that they are more than the tragedy, because sometimes that space of what has happened to me can start to take over the memory of, the actual
Yeah.
beings. And so, put light into who they are, who they really are. And, anything that we do, when you connect from the heart and you send a blessing or you speak to a soul, no matter whether they are physical or not, the soul will always hear you. It will always receive in whatever way is best, will always be received. And that's something that we can always do at all times. That's never taken away. We have the ability to do that all the time. And it has, an effect on our collective, because when it comes from our heart, it is spread out to every location. So that it would be the most beneficial thing to do. I'm also hearing to, there may be some things that come up physically that can be done. So there could be prayers or groups, or there could be things that come forward that you can join and, band energy together, which is always helpful to do that as well. But in the early days of a tragedy, especially for those of us that are so far away in distance, it really is our love, and, our intention of putting our love there with them and their families.
I can do that.
Yeah.
And I know you said that when they're in that liminal space, they can hear us.
Yes.
Just blessings, prayers,
Yeah, we don't
instead
always
of the
hear.
chaos.
So yes, and a lot of times the chaos is, it's the, think about electricity, with all the electricity of all the mines, and think
Mm-hmm.
of things going on in the news and it being repeated in the news, all of the different people, the sadness, the grief, the confusion, the anger, all of the things that come up. That is like a lot of electricity moving. So that can be
Yeah.
some of that chaos that is felt.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you come in with the intention of love, it helps quieten down that chaos. And
That makes
they
sense.
can always hear us. Yes, it's always being heard. The communication doesn't always come through clear. Sometimes you can communicate with someone's higher self. So if they're, you know, if you feel like you're not able to speak to that actual spirit of the person who's just crossed, their higher self can step in and help bridge it too,
Okay.
help bridge communication. But I will say that I feel a lot of safety in the souls that have crossed through that tragedy, meaning I feel a lot of protection in there.
Well, it's so interesting. I guess there's like several little camps along that river, and one of like the beloved camp owners, she passed away as well. And when I read that, I was like, I bet you anything that was to like guide all the kids, like, like that was her purpose, was to be there and help all the kids that need to cross. And so I do feel
Yeah,
like between, angels and Jesus and any other religious, you know, entities that there are helping them, I think that she's also helping them. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a hard one. This definitely is not easy when we are work through these things. But I agree with you, because the feeling is very gentle coming from that woman's energy as you talk about her,
hmm
and
hmm
very
hmm
purposeful in her timing as well. Yeah.
hmm
So, but I mean, we can take many different directions in this conversation, and I think we should open up more conversations about transitions and experiences, and kind of what you and I experienced too, Maren, with different spirits that we communicate with and what they share. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
been invaluable to hear some of
Mm-hmm.
the stories and things that a spirit will share with me, even when it's just a quick pop in a few words or something. It's just
Oh,
a little
we should do
library
that.
of,
Let's do that next week. Let's kind of like share some of the experiences that you've heard. And then if anybody else has experiences that they want to share in the comments,
yeah,
and or if you have any questions about
yeah,
this topic, that would be really good so that we can continue this next week because it's
yeah,
such a big topic and
yeah,
it's so interesting. And, yeah, you can't quite put specific definitions on it because it is so big. So, and layered. I
yeah,
agree with that. So,
yeah,
all
very,
right. Well,
okay,
thank you so much for answering my questions, Michelle. Everybody, I hope you have a
always.
wonderful week. And we'll be sure to say many, many blessings this week.
Yeah,
So,
sounds good. All right, stay
yeah.
healthy, stay well, everybody. See you next time.